Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Richard Skipper celebrates the best in entertainment. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. What are you celebrating today? Well, there are so many things that I am going to be celebrating today because I am going to be celebrating a dear friend. Don Derow and I have known each other for many years. We've been through ups and downs together, which we're going to talk about on today's show. She has an incredible new CD that's coming out on December 10th called My Ship, the Songs of 1941. And I was there at the very beginning of at her very first performance. We're going to talk about that and the events surrounding that and the struggles that she had to get through to get that show up. But before we bring her on, I'd like to give you just a little snippet of her amazing talent and a little clip from this show and this amazing new CD. And everyone, if you love the music of the 1940s, especially 1941, you are going to rush out and buy this CD. And here it is. Why don't we do this more often?
Gee, but it's great to get together again. Why does it only happen now and then? We ought to do this more often. Don't you agree that I'm right? We make each other laugh. We make each other sing. And you can never, ever overdo a good thing. So why don't we do this more often? Just what we're doing tonight.
And here she is, Dawn Derow. And I have to ask you, Dawn, why don't we do this more often?
I know. I've missed you. It's been a long time since I've seen you in person.
It's been a long time,
And
but
you
I
look
want to ask you.
fantastic.
Well, it's the lighting here, but I do. You look fantastic, but you are the fitness expert. I mean, you don't stop. You're always going. But I want to ask you before we delve into so many things that you've been doing. What are you celebrating? Wink, wink, because I know that you are about to become a married lady.
Yes, Sadie, married lady.
So what's the big date?
We're getting married on May 29th next year. And John Williams is my partner in crime and my fiance. And we're just having a great time planning the wedding. And we just moved into a new house in Florida. So, a lot of new things going on, a lot of changes, and it's all good stuff. So
now a lot of people, March 12th, 2021, the years are just
2020.
2020 actually.
Yeah.
Everything stopped. but things didn't necessarily stop for you because you rolled up your sleeves. You went into the recording studio. You started laying down many of the tracks that you did for this CD. Am I correct? And you
Yeah.
really started, saying, these are the things that I need to do to keep my career on track and to keep going. What kept you motivated when the rest of the world was going, what's next?
Well, two things. We did record the first couple of tracks on February 20th, 2020. So we had gotten a couple things done, and then we were supposed to go in on March 20th, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I remember, Ian and Tom and Daniel all texting me and calling me like, listen, hey, in 24 hours, I just lost a whole year of gigs. Are you going to keep the 20th? And I was like, yeah, sure. There's only a couple of us going to be in the studio. Why not? And then of course, like a day later, it was like, no. So we pushed that to September 29th, which was when we all felt like we could go in safely. I had to kind of limit. I couldn't have a photographer. I did have Michael Stever as a videographer, but he stayed in the booth with me. So we kept it very limited. And everyone wore masks that, if we were around anyone. And then also the other thing that kept me motivated is I was supposed to launch my Gypsy in My Soul, the tribute to Edie Gourmet show on March 14th, 2020. And I canceled that, jumped in the car with John and his younger daughter, Sam. And we basically moved up to North Salem where he was living at the time and quarantined there, which was amazing. It was a beautiful place to quarantine, and my dog too. And so I think that, that kind of gave me the space and the freedom to kind of go, okay, well, here's all this downtime, what can I do what can I work on that I haven't had time to work on? Cause I'm always running around crazy and doing so much. So I cleaned up my YouTube channel and I worked on, the things that we can do with social media and my platform and my brand and, trying to figure out, okay, what's my next angle where, when we can come back and do live performances and be all together again, what am I going to have, right at the starting gate ready to go? And I think, I worked with Paul Rolnick closely. We had many, many conversations on the phone, just gearing up to preparing for the album and what it was going to look like and kind of organically feeling out how it was going to be transformed from a show into this amazing studio album. My first debut solo album. So
this is the first.
Yeah, I mean, I have my duo album with Sean Harkness, but that was a live recording. So
which I have, which is a great CD.
It is.
It's amazing, and I'm glad that you mentioned. First of all, Michael E. Stever, we love him. Paul Rolnick, we love him. One of the things that I really love in this business, I love being in the spotlight. I know that you love being in the spotlight, but I also love the collaborative process.
Yeah.
When you're working with great people and you surround yourself with great people, there's nothing better. And I love the fact that you acknowledge these people, that you bring them up. And we're going to talk about the road that has led to 1941 and other projects that you've done. I asked you before we began for a photograph of you at 5 years old. Those that have seen previous shows know why I do this, because to me, 5 years old is a pivotal point in a person's life. It's that time, I call it the purest self. It's just when you're starting to go to school and peer pressure, before peer pressure begins to get layered upon you, and teachers start shaping you as to who they think you should be or who you should not be. You grew up in one of my favorite spots on the planet, in Cape Cod. And you have actually created a show about growing up in a home where your parents brought music into your life early on. Let me show the photograph, first of all. And when you see this photograph, What can you tell everyone about this little girl? And look at you. You look the same.
My mom is cracking up, and she's sitting over here knitting in her other chair. And
Hi, Mom, and thank you for what you
said,
brought into the world.
she said when I sent you that photo, she was like, oh, the teachers used to always tell me Dawn's always singing in class. She's always singing and humming and singing songs. So I guess that's what I can tell you. I don't know. I was always, I think back to that time, and you're right. There's always that pivotal moment. That was like there's always that first pivotal. I think for me, it was first grade was a big pivotal transition. But for me, I think inclusivity was a huge thing. And it was in a positive way. It was like, I would see things happening, or, groups of people. And it was like, I want to do that. I want to be with that. I want to be in that group. It was like, I always wanted to be a cheerleader. And I, of course, became a cheerleader in high school. But I think that looking back, that's kind of shaped even how I collaborate with musicians, and how I pick my team or my crew is it's like, oh my God, I see something, it inspires something in me. And then I'm like, I want to work with that person. I want to be where that person is. I think that's partly, why I that's the generosity that kind of comes, I guess, from me in just a, caring way, I guess. And I just want to be part of the party.
Now, people who know you know that beyond being a cabaret singer, you have this amazing operatic voice. When did you first discover that you had that voice?
So around like 13, 14, right as I was going into high school, I was taking piano lessons, and I wanted to switch it out for voice. And I asked my parents, okay, like I did 4 years of piano. Can I take voice lessons now? Because I had been singing since I was younger, but and I did a lot of community theater up here on the Cape. And I took voice lessons for a year with a friend. We went as like we're 2-for-1, to save money. And then the following year, I went to the Academy, which is in Orleans, which is where I did a lot of shows as a kid. And they had this woman, Leilani Dalby, had put up this poster about an opera workshop. And it was like, come and sing in foreign languages, learn how to act, and learn about opera, all in one class. And I was like, yeah, kill two birds with one stone. Like, love that. Like, sing in different languages and sing high notes. I'm like, this sounds great. And I started as a mezzo. I played Carabino in the first show opera I ever did. I played, non so più cosa son, cosa faccio. I played Carabino, and then I worked with Leilani to develop my opera chops, I guess, at that young age of 15. And she geared me up for, college auditions. And I fell in love with it because of the challenge it gave me. It really grounded. It was the foundation of my instrument, and it still is. It's never let me down. I think, you talk about what the pivotal moment of a 5-year-old. Well, the pivotal moment of a 14-year-old was, I knew, okay, I want to learn this. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to get this technique down and learn the repertoire, and just kind of devour everything I can about this genre, because I know it's going to serve me. And I still look back and think of that, like that 14-year-old knew that I can sing till I'm 80 now, or 90, or maybe even 95. Like, Marilyn Mays almost is up there. So,
yeah, God bless her.
Yeah. So
as you're going into high school and you're thinking of college and what's going to be beyond high school, there are two forks in the road for you: musical theater, opera. You were leaning more towards which direction?
I was like, I'm going to be at the Met. I want to be an opera singer. And when I went to Boston Conservatory, I always danced at a young age. And kind of took acting, but really didn't get it. I didn't get it until later. Really, honestly, after I graduated Boston Conservatory, when I went to the method studio
Mm-hmm.
to study in London, and I studied just acting there, and that's when I kind of really understood what it was to be an actress. But I think the opera and the roles that I was singing and the arias and the education I got at Boston Conservatory informed that artist in me, how to put together a recital, it was funny, even the last time I was here on Cape Cod, down in the basement, we still have a DVD player, and I popped in my opera recital from my senior year. And I'm like, who is that? Like, how did I sing this crazy Bach cantata that just goes on and on. It's in German. And I'm like, oh my God, it still impresses me. And it was me.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Did you ever pursue straight acting as well? Did you do any of the classic straight acting roles beyond musical theater and opera?
I did in London. My first straight acting role was Mariah in Twelfth Night. And, I think with any role, whatever it is, and people say this all the time, when you go into an audition, you have to know that you're that role to go. When you go into that audition, you have to walk in the door like, no, I am this. This is who I am. And I walked into that audition. I was like, I'm Mariah. I want to be Mariah. And the director was like, you don't want to read for Olivia? That's really the lead. And I was like, no, I think I'm Mariah. And
Mm-hmm.
he said to me later, and he was my Shakespeare coach, my Shakespeare teacher at the Method Studio. And he was like, you were so certain and you were right. And you nailed it,
Mm-hmm.
And that was really my first, and that was in 2002. Because after 9/11, I didn't come back to New York. I was working on a cruise ship when 9/11 hit. And, all my friends were like, if you have another chance to do something else, don't come to New York right now. Like, don't come back after your contract's done. So I auditioned and I got into the Method Studio, and it was one of the best times of my life. And I loved studying the straight acting. And it was funny because I was persuaded to learn Chekhov and Shakespeare. And coming from an opera world and learning all the classics and music, I wanted to do film and television. And I told the artistic director of the school, I was like, no, I think I'm good with the classics. I've been there. And she's like, you're in London. I really think you should take the Shakespeare class and you should take the Chekhov class. And I loved it. I used to read like 5 plays in a week,
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. And I still love it, but it's like, how much can you do at once? It's like, I don't have a clone.
Let's go back for a moment. When did you make the decision? I know when you came to New York, but when the first time, but when did you know that you were ready, or when did you feel that you were ready to come to New York to pursue a career in the big time in New York City?
Oh my gosh. Well, I stayed in Boston for a year after college, and I would come to New York for opera auditions. And that was when I realized I can't do this. It was too, for one thing, it was too expensive. I mean, you had to pay for the auditions. You had to always have like 5 arias ready to go, like top notch, walk into an audition. And it wasn't just like 16 bars of music. You had to sing a whole aria, and then they picked from your other 5 arias. And I didn't know anyone. I didn't, I remember taking a bus from Boston to New York City, and I didn't know where to warm up. And I went into Central Park and I warmed up like behind a rock somewhere. Like, I don't even think I knew where the bridges were at that point. I was like, I'm just going to hide behind this rock and do my vocals.
There are no rocks to hide behind in New York City, in case anyone out there is asking.
Yeah. So, but I also realized that, I played guitar, and I loved, I grew up during like the Lilith Fair and like singer-songwriter Alanis Morissette, like Sarah McLachlan, and I loved that music too. Jewel, like they all influenced me. I mean, even earlier, like Joni Mitchell and Judy Collins and all the, so all those songstress sirens, they influenced me too. So I just didn't want to eat, breathe, and sleep opera. And I came to a decision that, I knew I was a pretty good actress and I was a pretty good dancer. I knew I could do like ensemble dancing. I was like, put me in the back, like that'd be fine. And I still got my high kicks, like I can still do it. But I just pivoted at that point. And obviously I grew up, my dad loves musical theater. My mom loves musical theater. So I knew all the old classics. And I started auditioning for musicals when I came to New York in 2000. That's when I first came.
So you had that experience of having come to New York auditioning. So you already knew the ropes a little bit in terms of what to do when you got to New York. But how did the move happen for you? Did you have a friend in New York? Did you come to New York on your own? I want to know about the early days, what I call the Hunger Years.
Yeah.
Or were there any Hunger Years for you?
So my cousin Justin lived in the city, and he was running a business at the time and kind of climbing the ladder of success in kind of the cyber world. And he had this kind of loft office apartment on 37th between 8th and 9th. And he's like, come and sleep on my couch. And I brought my little suitcase with my little dress and my audition book and whatever I could fit. And it would like sit in a corner. And I slept on this leather couch with like 5 guys around me smoking weed all the time and like working on their laptops, like blasting music. And he had all these saltwater aquariums everywhere. And so I'd start doing like random jobs for him. He'd be like, well, you can just be my assistant and like, I'll pay you. And I'm like, great. And Justin, he's a second cousin, but in my family, he's kind of more like a big brother because he doesn't have any siblings. And he grew up in California. So my brother and I have always looked up to him as more like a big brother. And he's taken both of us under his wing because my brother moved to New York shortly thereafter. So it was like a family affair. And I worked for my cousin. He paid for my first headshots, which still to this day, I'm like, thanks, Justin. And I still have. They were by Chia Messina, and they were great photos. And I would just take my little suitcase over to Ripley Greer and, do my auditions. And I thought it was great because I was right near Times Square, right? I came from Cape Cod to Boston to New York. And, I had auditioned for Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. I didn't get in. But I also wasn't ready for New York. So I think that was fine. But I was like, I'm right near Times Square, woo, and there was a meth lab like on the corner, and there was, I would get catcalls and like, all that nasty, dirty stuff in New York City. And I didn't care. Like, I just was like, whatever.
You were in the midst of it. So that was the important thing. And you were living your dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last night I watched Tick, Tick, Boom. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't yet, but I can't wait.
Oh my God. I love this movie. And it just that excitement of being in New York. I will tell you, I cried through the entire film. I cried over the loss of Jonathan Larson. Everyone watch this film. It's just amazing. But for every artist who comes to New York dreaming of making in this business, it really, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is a genius, really captures the feel of that film, of what it's like for every artist. And you describe what it was like being in that apartment, and and he captures that whole feel. But so you're in New York, you're auditioning and everything, and I know that you started getting work on cruise ships and everything, but were you getting breaks in New York, or how did the transition into Cabaret begin to happen for you, and how did you become familiar with Cabaret?
Okay, so for my first job, my first audition I booked in New York, and it was a show called Naughty Katie. It was a real watered down adaptation, children's theater, off Broadway, Kiss Me Kate version of Kiss Me Kate, and I was Bianca, and it was, I won't say a bad word, but it was a blank show. But it was fun. And actually there was like 6 of us in it and we all bonded, and like the director was crazy and the writer was crazy and they were always bickering. And, but it was like a little paid gig, and it played downtown. And I was like, hey, I just booked my first audition in New York City. And then shortly thereafter I booked the cruise ship. And I think, for me, I've never been equity. And I never did summer stock. I never, honestly, like I couldn't afford to do it. Like I couldn't afford to make.
Well, let me ask you, excuse me for interrupting, but was equity a goal for you?
I think it was, because I wanted to be on Broadway, and I knew I was good enough to be up there with everyone else. But I also, I think that when I auditioned, one, I sound mature and I look young. And I think that there was trouble casting me in, I would always get like, wow, you sound great. Like your voice is beautiful. Like, thanks. And I'd get callbacks. And then it was like, I felt like people didn't know what to do with me, because I look young now, and I looked like that 5-year-old picture when I was 24. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like I really looked like I looked young. And so I think that was part of the problem. And then also I also auditioned for interesting things, like very obscure things, or things that, the pay was good, but it was an interesting credit on my resume. Like I got to sing this Cirque show. It wasn't Cirque du Soleil, it was called Cirque, out of Florida. And it was part of Busch Gardens, and it was like 8 shows a week, and I was the only singer. And they flew me down to Florida. I worked with the producer to create this singing track, and because I had the opera chops, I sang everything from like this weird rap kind of belty thing, and it was all on syllables, like it was all made up gibberish, to like these high notes, like I'd just pop out like high E flats, and I had this amazing costume. $10,000, like orange and gold, like a Cirque costume. And I had this massive catwalk that I got to walk out onto the audience. So like I did that for a summer. So, and then I was also in the dance show, because I was also a dancer. So I was the swing for the dancers in the Elvis dance show, like at the same time, so that was kind of my version of summer stock. But in terms of getting into cabaret, I worked for NCL cruise ships for 3 years, and I started to do cabaret on there. The first show I did was a Karen Carpenter tribute show. And I worked with a piano player named Carl Hahn, and we put this together, and it was great, and people loved it. And I started, and I always did recitals, obviously. And my dad actually would always push me on the patter. Like I don't even think he realized that he was kind of being like a sideline director, but he was like, you gotta talk, you gotta set up the song. And I was like, oh, and I always like kind of fight him on it, but he was right, and it's still to this day, like when people ask me, like, do you ever get nervous? Like one of my friends just the other day was like, do you ever get nervous when you sing? And I was like, not for the singing, but sometimes for the patter, I get nervous. Like I get nervous.
What is it about the patter that makes you nervous? Because right now you and I are talking, and this doesn't make you nervous.
No, I think that when it's the kind of the glue that holds everything together, and it's just me in that moment, especially in cabaret when it is me, right? I think I don't know. I think I'm gonna like, mess up a line. And usually, and you've seen my shows, and usually if I do, I make some funny little whatever. And then it's like the audience laughs and it's fine, and it becomes authentic anyway. But I don't know. I think that just that, maybe it's just in the preparation that I get little nervous about it, but yeah, obviously I'm comfortable singing anything. So
Yes.
that's but, one of my first influences in cabaret was Sally Mays, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you're a good friend of hers, and I
Mhm.
know Jeff Harner's a good friend of hers, and, I, uh, I listened to her album. I went down to Colony Records, and I bought, like, a 40, I think it was, like, 40 bucks. It was so expensive, so overpriced, but, which now I think I just walked by there. Is it like a donut place or something now? I don't
I
know.
think it's Krispy Kreme donuts now, isn't it? It's been so long since I've been in Times Square.
Yeah,
I'm going to see a show tonight at 10 o'clock. Can you believe this? At Feinstein's. I can't believe I'm seeing a show so late tonight.
10 o'clock show.
A 10 o'clock show tonight. But I want to ask you, do you remember the first cabaret show that you saw?
Ye No, but, my first introduction to the New York kind of Manhattan Association of Cabaret clubs and the whole scene, was I took, Summer in the City workshop with Lenny Watts and Lena
Mhm.
Kourakis. I mean, and that's kinda where I met everyone, or at
Mhm.
least the first round of people
The first
that
round.
I met. I mean, I met Deb Berman and Susan Winter, and they had Karen Mason come in and talk to us, and they had is it Christine Ziemba? Am I saying her name wrong?
Karen
Um,
Sierra, Karen Sierra.
Karen Ziemba,
Yes.
and Julie Wilson came in. Yeah, and so that was really my first introduction to that. I don't remember what the first show was that I saw.
Did it feel like a natural transition for you, with the training that you had, or did it feel that you needed to shift gears a little bit? Because I know it's a different genre. Some people are very, it is an easy transition. For some people, it's not. It's not the same thing doing cabaret and doing theater. Uh,
Right.
you're very, I mean, you're very natural in cabaret. But and I haven't seen you uh, in that setting, but I can speak for you as a cabaret artist. It's a very natural setting for you. Was it a difficult transition for you?
Well, first of all, let me say that what's kind of sparked my interest to transition into cabaret was I finished doing Ships in 2007. I was auditioning again, and I thought at that point I really thought, oh, I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna make it. And then I really started getting kind of just bitter about the whole audition scene, and I jaded and it just wasn't serving me. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own show. I'm gonna sing the songs I want to sing and tell the stories I want to tell, and that's when it started in 2008. Ironically, or maybe not, I also transitioned into fitness at that time too. That's when I first became a group fitness instructor and started working at gyms. So um, it was a huge shift. I I think there's always like a transition, and theater is obviously very different because you're memorizing words on a page and you're putting a character and you're developing a backstory to either someone who was living or someone who's made up. Um, but I think I'm always kind of transitioning and learning how to shift, through cabaret. I think which is what I love about it because it's always like a learning
Mhm.
process. I think with all my shows, somebody just asked me if I could pick a genre, and I'm like, that's like picking your favorite child. Like,
Mhm.
like, like I don't think, and even with all the shows I've developed, I don't think they all had they all served a purpose in my life at that time. Were they perfect? Probably not. I mean, I look back at my first show, which I did at the Duplex. It was called Shooting My Arrow. And like no cabaret people were in it. I had a theater director, and I had a friend who music directed, who plays for a lot of in Broadway pits. And Lenny Watts did come to see it because I had taken the workshop, and that's I look back. I think I found the script like a while ago, and I was like, "Oh, let's talk about patter! Oh my god!" Like,
how did you choose your first?
Someone needed to be cutting that, and it was it was way too much patter.
How did you choose your first director?
I did well. I had done a production of Man of La Mancha out at Gallery Players, and I played Antonia, and he was
the director. God, I did a show there 150,000 years ago.
Yeah, and he was my director for that show. So it all kind of happened at the same time. I did that show, and I just was like, "Hey, do you want to direct my first cabaret?" And I went full out too. I had like a full band and a backup singer, like full out. I think that's what they said in my cabaret scenes review. Like, well, she certainly spent a lot of money on this first show.
Were those the right decisions for you at that time? I mean,
think so. I think so. I had fun. I loved that show. It was like, I love astrology. So it was like me kind of tying astrology into all these elements of my life and all these relationships, and, and kind of going back to what we were talking about collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way for me to kind of have like my team and my friends, in the show and around me. And it was supportive, yeah, I mean, it was fun. And I wanted to be a rock star too, so my mom's laughing.
Well, I do want to talk about the CD that's coming out on the 10th.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is 1941. My Ship, the songs of 1941. Let's go back to the very beginning, the brainchild of that. Whose idea was this incredible show? Because all of the songs from the show are all from that one year. And we'll talk about those songs in just a moment. But whose idea was this?
It was mine essentially, but I was working with Barry Levitt at the time, which it's almost 5 years now when we started working on the show. And I was obsessed with Anita O'Day's version of My Ship, and which happens to be from the year, that recording was from the year I was born, which is 1975. And I was obsessed with her and with that version. And Barry, at the time, we were working on jazz standards. I went to him in 2015, and I wanted to coach with him and learn American songbook standards. I had sung some of them at that point, but hadn't really done a deep dive into some of the great torch singers of all time. And he was giving me lists of people to listen to, and one of them was Anita O'Day, one of them was Edie Gourmet, and Ella Fitzgerald and the likes. And I was hired to do the Cabaret Festival that year because Barry and I had done a small set in 2015 up here in Provincetown, and Patricia Fitzpatrick had asked me to come back, and she wanted me to do a full show. And the theme that year was the 40s. It was Sentimental Journey, and it was all 40s music. And I happened to just look and see. I'm like, when was My Ship written? Oh, 1941. And then Barry and I just started looking at other songs from that year and compiling things. And then somewhere along the line, I think it was like in April of 2017, I was like, okay, let's bring in a director. And we talked about who I should work with. And, up until that point, I'd worked with Lenny Watts. I'd worked with Lena Katrakis, who has directed many of my shows, both of them. And, I'd seen a couple of shows that Jeff Harner had directed. And I was like, let's ask Jeff Harner. I think I really want to work with him. And Barry was like, such a great. Oh my God. Perfect. perfect. And we were like the dream team. We really rehearsals were, I mean, I'm so glad I still have my rehearsal tapes because, you know, it was magic. It was really magic. And so we put it together and we did it.
You hired me to be your publicist, which I
hired you to be my publicist.
And should we talk about your opening night?
Sure.
Because I mean, it was just one of those surreal moments that I will never forget. Barry Levitt, for those who don't know, phenomenal musical director, worked with every major giant in the business. I also did a show for years with Dana Lorge at the Iguana. We did a show called Wednesday Night at the Iguana. And Barry Levitt was our musical director. So being on the other side, working on this night was incredible. You had done your tech rehearsal. It was opening night. We're at the Laurie Beachman. The excitement that goes with every opening night is happening. I remember Kenny Bell saying, Dawn, we're about to open the doors. You went into, let's describe this dressing room, if you will. It's not a dressing room, folks. It's a bathroom. And it's the size of a broom closet at the Laurie Beachman. And so Dawn goes into the room to get ready. And I think you have a hairdresser and a makeup artist to do your makeup in this little broom closet. And we are sitting there, and I don't know if you know this. I said to Barry, if for any reason that Dawn is not able to go on tonight, I know all of her songs. And he turned around and he laughed, and then he fell. And I thought that he had caught his foot on the railing of the bar. And little did we know that he had had a massive heart attack.
Yeah.
And he was gone. And it was just something that we all experienced together. Just an amazing experience that no one should go through. But we all shared that moment together, his last moments together. And we just lost Stephen Sondheim. And from what I understand, he had a wonderful night that night. And then, so his last moments, he was doing what he loved.
Yeah. Yeah. That day will be, we are all forever tethered to that. And I remember you and I down on the floor next to him. I think you were holding his hand, and Sherry started performing CPR, and I took over at some point, and I think her name was Kim from upstairs, the other waitress, also performing CPR on him. It was just awful. It was
awful. And, I rode in the ambulance with him to the hospital, and we're there not knowing what was going to happen, and having to call Brenda, his wife, and breaking the news that she needed to come there immediately. But talk about for yourself how you were able to pull yourself through this, because you had to go on, and not that night, of course, but to bring this show back together and to move on with a new musical director and to make this show go on, because you had to honor Barry and the work that he had done prior to this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what I thought in that moment. I think I cried a lot. It still chokes me up right now just thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, he was such a mighty force for me and for so many people that I had to serve that. I had to kind of bring that to fruition. That last sound check that we did, I mean, Jeff always says, he's like, "Oh my God, it was just glorious. You guys were in
That's
your
incredible.
element. You were, it was just, I think we ended with like Skylark, and
Mhm.
that's the last thing he played, And I remember being at the funeral and someone saying that to me, and not even realizing it, but someone saying, one of his other, you know, students, clients that he works with saying, you know, he played, he got to play for you before, that was the last music he
Mm.
created.
But then Ian Herman came in, and
And
Ian
Ian Herman,
Herman.
yeah, and I talked to a lot of people, a lot of, it's like, talk about community. I
Mhm.
talked to a lot of people in the community. I talked to you. I talked to a lot of people saying, okay, how do we proceed? And Ian and I had wanted to work together prior. We had met each other and, like flirted with the idea, oh, we should work together. Oh, we should write something, Um, and I think it was Tanya Moberly and Raissa Katona Bennett. They were like, I think you should call Ian Herman. And so I did, and he came in, and I remember, like, I mean, it had to be like a week later, being at Ian Herman's apartment with Jeff and running through, Barry's Barry's charts. And I mean, he's brilliant. He just picked
Mhm.
it right up, first of all, and then really made it his own. And that's really what you'll hear on the album. But um, I remember like breaking down at the one part in the second song of the show when Let's Get Away from It All, and I do the introduction and I'm introducing the band and I'm saying my first mate, and and then I would say, Barry wanted me to call him his little skipper. And
Ugh.
I broke down. I got to the part in the script and I was like I didn't think, oh my God, I have to change this.
Mhm.
So Ian became the captain of my ship,
Mm.
um, and honestly, like, he saved me in a lot of ways, like, as a friend. I mean, he's become so emotional.
No, but, I mean, the life goes on, and God bless the fact that Barry was the one who launched this ship. Think about that.
Yeah.
Um, Julie Wilson went through this with her musical director. Barbara Cook went through this with her musical director. Nicholas King just went through this with Mike Renzi.
I
Um, there's,
Edson, we lost a lot of music directors.
it's just, the relationship between a great singer and the musical director, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
But it goes back to where we began. It's collaboration, but now it's about to set sail again. People can go and listen to it on Spotify and other music sources. But when will people be able to actually? Is it going to be released as an actual CD? Or I know now people are listening to it in various different ways. I still love to have a CD.
Yes,
And
you'll get it. You'll get one. It's actually, cross fingers, hopefully arriving here on Friday, because I'm here to sing with the Cape Symphony, and I'll be able to sell the albums at the 6 shows I have this weekend, and I'll be singing White Christmas, which is on the album.
Mhm.
Um,
Just in time from 1941.
yes.
Yesterday, I had, tomorrow night, I'm going to be at the York Theater. There's a new musical on Irving Berlin in Hollywood.
Oh,
So White Christmas is not in that show, by the way, because all the songs are songs that were written specifically for Hollywood.
oh,
And
yeah.
that song, as you know, was not written for Hollywood.
No, was actually written because of his 3-week-old son who died on Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bing Crosby sang it on Christmas Day in 1941 for the first time, which is why I put it in the show, which is 18 days after the Pearl Harbor attack. So, but the album is going to be out on the 10th. You can get it anywhere. It'll be on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, CD Baby, everything. It's worldwide. I got picked up by a jazz label called Zoho Music. So they're doing all the distribution. They did the manufacturing. They did all the artwork on the CD. That's Matt Baker took the photo, but
Phenomenal. Yes.
did all the artwork. And so they have a team. They have a publicist that helps get it out there. And then I hired a radio promoter, so you might even hear it on a jazz radio station.
That's great. Now I will gladly pay for it, but I want an autographed copy.
Okay.
Okay. So but I want to ask you, what is the greatest impact that this music has now had on you, and what do you think that you're bringing to this music that now you've been singing this music for several years now.
Yeah.
And obviously you've evolved with this music. How has this music changed you?
Well, I think first of all, I love jumping into the vintage look and the costumes, and I'm very connected to my roots. My grandmother, she was a Roxyette in 1939 as a dancer. So who knows, maybe that'll be my next show. But I'm always interested in kind of preserving, what's come before. And I think that's our job. That's what we're here to do. To tell the stories, to carry the music through generation to generation, so that so people hear it in a different light and hear a different interpretation of it. I think that's why it resonates with me so strongly. And you can't go wrong. These songs they're so well written. They, lyrics, music, melody, everything. And some of them we were able to kind of put my own kind of twist on it. And then others, we really kept it, classic and to the original, structure of the song. So
I have to say, I saw the show, I think 5 times, and I never got tired of watching it. Was there a particular song that you enjoyed performing above all others?
Well, because I'm a tortured soul and dramatic, I love Just Squeeze Me into I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good, because I have a whole subtext story going on in my head. And I remember when I was working on it in the studio, and Paul Rolnick was like, wow, man, you sing this he's like, I understand what you're saying. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad. And then I was like, but let me tell you my real backstory. And I sent him this huge long email. I'm like, so this is what's really happening in my head. He's like, okay, I'll never question your subtext again, or something like, something funny like that. Cause I love that one. I love White Cliffs of Dover too.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna run out of time, but before we do, my tribute to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio. So these are my random questions for you today. And the first question is, what is the best thing that you feel that you've done for the cabaret community?
Oh my gosh. I think maybe my versatility, maybe just surprising people, and you don't know what you're going to get next, maybe.
Okay, that's good. And the next question is, are you a fighter?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm also a lover, but I'm a
direct answer there. What is the nicest thing that anyone ever said to you in your career?
I think when I've had this a couple times, but I think when someone comes up after my show and says, you're just so authentic. Something to do with authenticity. And when they can read that and they feel that from the audience, that's really special.
That's great. When were you the most moved by a ceremony?
I mean, I'd probably say Barry Levitt's Service.
Wow. That's,
Yeah.
What has been the biggest accomplishment of your life thus far?
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's really tough. I think of everything in chapters. So, I mean, I think this album, I think this album is probably the biggest accomplishment.
Great.
Because it's so big and it's taken us, 2 years.
Okay. And what has been the hardest decision that you have ever had to make in your career?
Probably when I left London. I didn't want to leave, and I feel like I could have stayed there longer.
Okay. Last week, I interviewed Patricia Stark, and I don't know if you saw that conversation that we had, but she wrote a book called Confidence, which I recommend to everybody. And in the book, she talked about her confidence team, not confidence, confidence. And who would you consider to be your confidence team? Those four people that build you up.
Jeff Harner, Ian Herman, my fiance John, and my parents. Put them as
one. What is the best thing that you have ever done in your that you feel that you've ever done on stage?
The best thing I've ever done? Well, I mean, I think when I did my classical cabaret show, kind of like when I listen back to my senior recital, it's the same kind of, I'm blown away by, tackling that. I like a challenge. So that was pretty challenging. And I did that with Mark Janis, and that was amazing.
And my last question for you is, what experience in your career has made you the wisest?
Oh, I think this show, my ship, I think this period right now, I really feel like it's brought me into my own. It's really shifted me into, someone said to me, like, the world is going to see you now. Like, you've arrived. And I think it's my ship. I think it's because of Barry and all that foundation, everyone that's worked on this, everyone.
Well, as I said, the show was phenomenal. I can't wait to have my own copy of the CD. I thank you for being here. Congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
Congratulations on everything that you've accomplished, not only in the past year and a half, but up to this point. I thank you for being here today. Don't go anywhere for a moment. I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. I hope if this is your first time here, I hope that this will not be your last. There is a button on my main page on Richard Skipper Celebrates right here on YouTube that says join the celebration. And I hope that you'll click on that, and that will keep you up to date with each time that I'm going to go live, you'll get a notification. Don't worry, I don't go live but once a day when I do go live. And if you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you did, please leave a comment on YouTube, share this with your friends, and please tell others about the show. That's how our audience grows. And Dawn and I both know how important that is in this business. So please do tell other people about the show. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the third person on the list and reach out with a phone call. Dawn knows all about this. Reach out with a phone call, call that person and tell them what they mean to you. And then what I want you to do on the 10th is I want you to order 2 copies of this CD. I want you to keep one for yourself, and I want you to send, the holidays are coming up, I want you to send one to the 3rd friend on your list and let them know what they mean to you. Not with the email, not with a text message, not with a private inbox message, but with a phone call and a message on the CD that they're going to receive. Dawn will thank you, I will thank you, and your friend will thank you. Now, I'm going to leave the screen, Dawn, and you're going to have the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out at this time. I thank you for being here. Happy holidays. Congratulations to you and John, and all good things as you go through the holiday season and the years ahead. And may your ship have smooth sailing ahead. Remember, you can't go anywhere without your skipper.
That's right.
Goodbye.
Bye. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Richard, for having me. That was really fun, and happy holidays to everyone. And if you do want to see the show, I will be performing it at Green Room 42 on January 15th. It's a Saturday night at 7 p.m. And you can see the full show if you haven't seen it yet. Or if you've seen it, come back and see it again, because there's a couple of new twists and turns that we're adding to the show. Thanks again, and peace and love.